Well, hello, time management fans. My name is Glenn Watt, Senior Editor of Time Management Magazine, and today we're fortunate enough to be joined by none other than Augusto Pinaud. Augusto Pinaud is a writer, a public speaker, and a best-selling author in the US, UK, Germany, Spain, and France. In another life, he was a lawyer in recovery and former technology consultant and salesman. His passion is to write. He'd been studying productivity and helping people get organized for the last 10 years. Augusto lives in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He is married and has a little girl, a boy, and 2 dogs that keep him company. He spends his day teaching his daughter and son various things, writing and washing dishes, because he believes in what Agatha Christie once said, "The best time for planning a book is when you're doing the dishes." Augusto has written several books, 25 Tips for Productivity, No, and 4 a.m., A Productivity Argument. Thank you for joining us today on Time Management Magazine, Augusto.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And as you said, we are launching our new book, iPad Only, that I co-wrote with Michael Slinsky. And it's been a really fun experience. The last weekend was a great weekend for the book. We hit bestseller list in the UK, Germany, Poland, Spain, Australia, US, and Mexico. It was really, really fun, and it's been an incredible experience. It's working and showing people our experience being iPad only.
Well, congratulations. That's really fantastic. And it really is kind of a tribute to your book success is really a kind of a statement on how popular the iPad has become. And I think you're really a pioneer in this space for moving productivity to a whole new level on just the iPad. What inspired you to do that?
What brought me to the iPad was actually the need for focus and concentration. I discovered that I'm much more effective doing one thing well in the iPad that my previous experience was multiple monitors, multiple computers, and everything else. I began using the iPad since day one. I mean, since they launched it, for me, there was something there. And it took me a year to really jump both feet front to iPad only. And my co-author took him a couple more years. It was time for him to upgrade his MacBook Air. And he has read some of what I have said about it. And he said, well, what if instead of upgrade my MacBook Air, I just go iPad only too? And he went. He had a year over, playing with just iPad, same as me. And there is something really cool about the iPad. Is in part, not only you work better, not only you are more focused, you discover that many of your workflows can work much better on the iPad, but also it brings a fun element that at least my work has lost with the Mac and the PCs and the multiple monitors and all this stuff I had over my desk.
What it was like before? Like what was your workflow like before you moved to the iPad? So that maybe some people can get some idea of the benefits that they can gain. So what was it like before you moved?
Before even I went to the Mac, I was a PC user, okay, and I travel with a tablet PC and a laptop because I like the 2 screens, but I travel almost 80% of the time. So that was the best compromise I found. So my bag was pretty heavy to begin with. I was able to set up an office any part of the world. So I had scanners, printers, 2 laptops, multiple batteries, chargers. That bag was around 34 pounds. It was a really heavy thing. And when I got the iPad in 2010, that came to replace my tablet PC. And that was already a big improvement from that. I had an HP TC4200 and with an extra battery who could last the whole day. And I changed that thing that weighs God knows how much for the iPad that weighs almost nothing. It was really funny. And from there, I bought a Mac and leave the other laptop behind. And a year later, I start noticing that I was using less and less the Mac. I was carrying it, but I was not using it as much. So I start looking for a solution to leave the Mac connected and access with the iPad through the Mac in case I need it. And I begin documenting every time I needed to access and why, and begin using the iPad. At the beginning, there were a lot of things that honestly I was not doing, not because the iPad was a limitation, just because I didn't thought about a way to do it. In the book, I tell the story here in the United States. We have what is called a flexible savings account for insurance. That basically you pay an X amount every paycheck and you can use it for paying medical expenses. But in order to get paid from that, you need to scan a form, fill a form, fax the form. And I used to do it at home, fill the form, scan it, connect the scanner to the computer, scan, then fax it. It was really a messy process. Until one day I thought about using the iPad for that. And for the first time that year, I was ahead on submitting my claims and everything else. Before that, I was always behind because it was such a painful process to do all that. And that was the moment I started noticing that there was more things that I could do than the things I was noticing. So I start making a list. Every time I open the laptop or sit in the laptop to do anything, I write down what it was in detail and begin looking how I could change those workflows. And today, there are really few things I do in the Mac. One of the few things I do in the Mac is I use a software called Scrivener that takes my text and converts it into EPUB or iBook or Kindle format. And the only way to do that is the Mac. That's one thing I do. But I do the writing of the books, translating of the book, interacting with the editors back and forward with track changes, everything on the iPad. Everything goes back to the MacBook when I just need to do convert. Other than that, it's really happening in the iPad. And aside of that, I think my MacBook has that and it has iTunes. So my daughter can watch movies on the old Apple TV. But
Yeah.
everything else really happened in the iPad.
When you first decided to move pretty much right over to the iPad, what did you find were some of the challenges that you ran into? Like
Myself.
What's that?
I said myself.
Yourself?
I continue believing this. The biggest obstacle we have going to the iPad is not the hardware, it's not the power of the machine, it's ourselves. We have two bad things, all of us, okay? One of them is we have been convinced that in order to use a computer, we need a keyboard. And actually, it's interesting. People go buy an iPad, and the first accessory, even before the case, is a keyboard. And we all did that. I mean, I did the same thing. Okay, I bought my first iPad in 2010 and bought that with a keyboard and a case in that order. Okay, and it was later on that I discovered that the keyboard in the case of the iPad is really optional. And in many cases, you don't even need it. But we come with a lot of ideas of how working into a computer should be. And many of these ideas don't apply to the iPad. We come on how things should work and how our workflow should be because that has been working since the 1980s. And a lot of those don't apply to the iPad and simply don't work. The second biggest problem we have is what we call in the book the because I can. Your laptop is a powerful machine. So because you can do 7 things at the same time. Because you can open Photoshop to really edit something that, you really don't need it. But hey, I have Photoshop, I have a powerful computer, let me do it. And it is things that if you are honest with yourself, you really need it. No, but hey, I have the software, Mm-hmm. I'm been a power user of Excel for years. And I know how to do macros. And if you ask me why you did so many macros over the years, the answer is because I could. Okay. Some of them, the formula will have been enough, but hey, I could do the macros. So I did them. And it is those two things who get to be a biggest obstacle when we get to the computer, when we get to the iPad. Why? Because the iPad works in a totally different way. Okay? Keyboard, you don't need the keyboard. Really, I have a keyboard, yes, and I use my keyboard only when I'm going to write more than 2 hours in a row. And the only reason is because I get tired of more than 2 hours of typing. But if I'm going to be working, replying email or doing short things, I don't need the keyboard. I learned how to type on the screen. I have mentioned about an application called Tap Typing, and we mentioned the application in the book. And that's how I learned to type. When I got my iPad, my first iPad, when I went iPad only, I could type less than 20 words per minute. It was painful. I'm a fast typist on a keyboard. Okay, so it was painful. And I thought about getting rid of the iPad. And a friend of mine told me, why you don't learn to type on the screen? I said in one of my books that common sense is the most uncommon thing ever, And when he said that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I went, looked for an application, tried Tap Typing, loved the application, learned to type. And I can type today on my iPad mini 60 words per minute or more. That it is not as fast as I can go into a regular keyboard, but it's pretty good. And it's fast enough for me to, when I'm writing an email or something like that, to do it quick. And I continue practicing. My goal is to be as fast in the iPad mini as I am on the keyboard. And I'm sure eventually I will make it.
Another question. Now that you've made this shift over to being on the iPad for most of everything that you're doing, so you've shifted your entire productivity over to the iPad, what do you find is your biggest time saver now that you've made that shift? Is there a technique or an app or a workflow, something that you find is really saving you a ton of time?
It is impossible to multitask. We believe that multitasking is good and look all that I can do. But really, you can't multitask. What you can do is quick refocusing. Okay? And what that means is you are really not paying attention to this or to that. You are just kind of paying attention to multiple things, but not really paying attention to anything. I had a writer friend who challenged me about work. Instead of work into hours of sitting hours of writing, he said, why you don't try to go into 20 minutes? Go 20 minutes, rest, go 20 minutes again. And you will notice how much over the same 60-minute time, how many words you're writing more. And when he said that, I was like, you will kill my inspiration. That was my first thought. And I try it. And it's incredible. And it is exactly the reason why I love so much about the iPad. You give me the MacBook, and I'm so fast, okay, doing Command Alt Tab, okay, to change applications that I don't even notice it. I mentioned I recommend to people to use two different browsers, one for work and one for play. And I've been saying this for years. And the reason is you need training. Okay? If you give yourself, you will able to play all that you want in X browser. In my particular case, is Safari. If I open Safari, my brain knows automatically this is playtime. And I'm playing and it's fine. But if I open Google Chrome, my brain has been trained to understand this is work. What that helped me is if I found a link and instead of going on the chain of following links, if I am in Chrome, my brain has been trained to stop and think, is this work or play? This is play. Fine, then can I play right now or not? And if the answer is no, then I can copy the link on my system and then follow it later. What happened to many people, me being guilty, okay, and that's the reason I start using the two browsers, is you get a link, this link is cool, and then that link takes you to a second link and another one, and the next thing you discover is 45 minutes are gone. And that's something that the iPad do really well. Okay, the iPad keeps you in one application. You cannot have three things at the same time. You can have one application. I even when I'm writing, because like everybody, there are days that you sit to work and you are full, you're rested, your attention is sharp. We all have those days. Some of them, okay? But most of our days, okay, you are tired, distracted, thinking about 3,000 things, and it's hard sometimes to focus. And on the iPad, there is a little thing little people know. If you go to the menus, accessibility, that is called access control. And then if you click three times, you can type a password. And that will force you to stay on that application. So if you hit the home button, it will ask you for the password. And that is enough, at least for me, to say, hey, wait, I'm fooling around. Let me cancel here and go back and try to refocus and really keep myself into the task at hand, instead of just get distracted and waste an hour. In the computer, you can install software to do exactly the same thing. It's just you have much more possibilities to do multiple things, and you have much higher risk to be multi-distracted instead of focus and working.
Wow, those are some awesome tips. I had never thought about the browser tip of having two different browsers. That's an awesome tip. And I never knew about the accessibility option. That's another awesome tip. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It is I have talked many times about the two browsers because I believe is one of the things that, like me, many people struggle with. You know, we are in a browser all day. You have access to a browser, and with that browser, you have access to infinity. Okay, because the web is the closest thing to infinity that you're going to find. And if you don't put yourself limits, what happens is you get lost. And with that lost, you may lose half an hour, 45 minutes, and you need to train yourself to put limits so you can make better decisions.
That's very true. That's very true. That's some sage advice. Another question for you. What would you like people to go away from, after seeing this interview, what would you like people to go away with?
You know, I believe the comfort zone is a really dangerous place because it's a place you're comfortable. And with this comfortable place, what tends to happen is you stop challenging assumptions. We are not the first people to try to go iPad only. We are not the first people who is iPad only. And we are not going to be the last. We are just some people who is trying to show the world that we test our own assumptions. And we're inviting the people to test their own assumptions. Do you really need that powerful machine on which you know you're getting distracted? Do you really need to sit and write for 4 hours when you can accomplish the same thing on 4 blocks of 20 minutes? Do you really type? You know, typing is one of those assumptions that I love. You know, everybody believes they type faster than what they do until they test themselves. And then when they test themselves, well, the software may need to be wrong. And the interesting thing is people don't do anything about it. When people come and approach me and say, well, you know, I really need a couple more hours a day. Well, that's it. I can get you most likely a couple of hours a day. Learn to type. Because if you type right now 30 words per minute and you learn to type 60, that is not fast in any measure. Okay, that's not a growth of 50%. No, that's 100% growth. You have been doubling the time or the amount of output you can produce on the keyboard. If you do that on 1,000 words, if you do 1,000 words, imagine what you can do. You're going to take half of the time now. You know, and people think, well, I don't need it because I just type short emails. Yeah, the difference is your short email take a minute and my short email take 20 seconds. And it is an assumption, and like that, well, no, I will not be able to work iPad only because I need this and I need to multitask. Do you really need to multitask? Or if you try to single task, you will finish your task in less time. And again, our assumptions, they're people people get convinced of certain things are true, and multitasking was one of those. For years, multitasking was a good thing. Even if you go to career blogs and people who talks about resume, people say, "Oh, you should say that you are able to multitask." And why? Really? And that's one of the strengths of the iPad. One of the strengths of the iPad is that it forced you to reevaluate your workflows, to reevaluate how you work, what you do things, even how much power you need. If you think about it, our model to buy a new laptop is you want, for most people, oh, I want the most powerful thing. My criteria has been I want the lightest thing and I want the most battery that I can possibly get. So if you now go to that, well, the iPad may last you the whole day, and weight is almost nothing. Can it do everything that I need? The answer is yes. The question now is if the people who is listening to us, what they really need that powerful machine. And when I say iPad only, doesn't mean I only do things on the iPad. No. Okay. There are things that I do outside of the iPad. Okay. I need to submit my books using the computer. Why? Because there is no other way. But most of my work happen in the iPad. The other thing that people don't pay attention is that if people get honest with themselves, they are already 30 or 40% on their smartphones. So why not get another 40% in a bigger screen like the iPad and just go now 80%? Because the reality is people is on their smartphones. And that takes 30, 40%. Turn that to an iPad, add another 30%, and you're 60, 70% of the time on the device.
I never really thought about it, but I guess another thing is because of the way the iPad is designed, you can only be working on one thing at a time. You can't have things popping up and coming up and interrupting.
You can make it happen with notifications, but
True.
But yeah, mostly you cannot. And there is cool things. The iPad adapts you to the way you want to work. If you're working in a laptop, you can only work with your screen this way. Doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're reading an email, this way. If you're writing a book, this way. If you're reading a newspaper ad, this way. If you're working on the iPad, you can go like this, or any other, you can go, you can grab, you can touch, you can really interact with the content. You can go and read the newspaper. We all read sometime in our life the newspaper in the browser in the laptop. Okay? And it was an unnatural thing. Read the newspaper here, and it works great. Why? Basically because you can move, you can zoom, you can pinch, you can do so much with the content that a laptop is not designed to do and to allow you to do. But at the same time, that is exactly what makes the iPad so powerful, and at the same time, what is the biggest obstacle? It is not a laptop. And a lot of people go and buy their iPads thinking, oh, well, this is going to be another kind of laptop. And no, it's not. And that's the reason we buy keyboards, because it's going to be another kind of laptop. And it's not. It's a different device. But if you are willing to go and pass that first barrier, you can discover things that are really cool. For example, when I'm writing with the iPad this way. Why? Because it gives you the sense that you're writing a whole page. If you're writing a column and you need to use your laptop this way, you don't get that same sense. And it seems like a little thing, but it really makes a huge difference.
What is the one question that you've never been asked that you're dying to answer.
What you will do if you cannot use Apple devices anymore? You know,
Hmm.
I'm an iPad only guy, and I've been asked, well, if you cannot use an iPad anymore and you need to go to a different thing, what you will do? And let's clarify that I hope that not do not happen, because the problem is
No.
I don't believe there is yet a platform that I will go happily. You know, I've been fortunate enough to be playing with Androids, and I've been fortunate enough to be playing with the Microsoft and the Surface, and they are not yet designed to be effective. Both platforms are trying to replicate what we have on the laptop. So if I cannot use an Apple device anymore, I most likely will go to Windows and forget about the tablet experience. As sad as
Hmm.
that sound.
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah. I I'm with you. I used to be a PC fan. Well, I was a very large supporter of Windows for many years, and not that I don't. I can't say I don't, support them, but I just find if I want it to work, just want it to work, then I'll just do
Yeah,
something
it
Apple.
is it is part of what happened. I'm not saying it's perfect. No, it's not. But
No.
what the machine is doing, it do it really well. That's what in part happened with the iPad. Can the iPad do everything? No. But what it does, it does it so well that it's totally worth it.
So, Augusto, what is your passion outside of time
I
management?
am a library rat. I love to read. You know, I have been reading over 52 books a year for many, many years. Um, and I read everything. I read from historic books to fiction. I love fiction. I will love to spend double or triple of the hours reading fiction. And Agatha Christie has been was my inspiration to be a writer. And I don't know how many times I have read the whole books she has wrote. And I love to read, and that's probably outside of time management my biggest passion. Give me a book, and you will, I will get lost. You will not know that I'm there, basically.
And who would you say is your biggest inspiration or hero?
Well, from the writing perspective, without a doubt, Agatha Christie. I love what she did. I love what she wrote, and I wish that my writing someday gets to be as good as hers, even if it's on a different area. And also, I admire the people who believe change is possible. There is a lot of people, and most likely not the people who listen to us and to read the magazine and to read the books I wrote, but there is a lot of people in the world who believe that change is not possible. That you are what you are, you get what you get, and that's it. And I really admire the people who make the effort to change and who believe that change is possible and that daily they fight against themselves in order to change. And it's not a particular person, but is I really admire that kind of people.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Augusto.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was really fun. I I hope you get to use the iPad more for your notes, since I know the notes are on paper and people don't know that. um, Guilty of charge, but hey, as the iPad only co-author of the book, I need to make that mention. And for the people who listen, thank you very much. Again, my books are available in English and Spanish. My latest book, co-wrote with Michael Slinsky, is the iPad only. And contact me. I love to interact with people. I love to help people. My motto in life is I love to teach people how the small things create big changes. And that's what I've been doing with my books, I hope, and what I've been doing with the articles and everything else I have written in the past. And if I can help anybody to see something small that can create a big impact, I'm more than happy to help.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you, time management fans, for joining us for this interview. Hope you enjoy the rest of the issue. Talk to you soon.